Thank you, Mark. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Wonderful to be here with you on a Thursday in this potent moment coming into the full moon of Elul. And today I want to speak to a theme that is alive for me here in this month of Elul, where we are continuing to prepare for the high holidays. And I want to lift up a powerful teaching from this wonderful book that you might be reading with us right now in the Shofar Project. This is Real and You're Completely Unprepared by Alan Liu. This is one of those books where the title alone teaches so much. And there's a bit of irony, I think, in this book being a resource that can help us to prepare for the powerful gateway of transformation that we're approaching, in that one of his most clear messages here is actually that you are completely unprepared. Right? So what does it mean to prepare and at the same time know that we are completely unprepared? So in chapter 5 of this book, which we've been reading this week in the Shofar Project, Rabbi Alan Liu speaks to the way that when life gets really real, when major experiences happen, we often come face to face with the truth that it's actually impossible to be fully prepared for the rawness, the reality, the directness of those encounters. And he gives some examples from his life. He gives an example of being at the birth of his child, how he had prepared and wanted to be meditating the whole time and have this spiritual transcendent experience, but it was as real and raw as you could get. And he just realized that there was absolutely no way that he could have ever been prepared for what happened there. Another example he gives is how his mother as a child was a prodigal piano player and rehearsed for months and months and months for an opportunity to perform at Carnegie Hall. But when she was there in that moment on the stage in front of the piano and she looked out on the sea of thousands of people, she totally blinked and could not remember a note of her piece. And personally, I can very much relate to this experience of preparing and then life serving up a powerful moment that is so much bigger than anything I could have imagined. And I find that this truth also doesn't only apply to those major life moments, right? Because the truth is that life is so often serving us up new challenges, new unprecedented experiences, new opportunities for facing the unknown and for learning, what is the way forward? The way forward here might be different than something I've encountered before. Perhaps it's a new relational challenge. Perhaps even, it could just be that a friend or a loved one is going through something difficult. And we realize, wow, I don't really know actually what advice I would give, for this situation. For me, sometimes what happens is I'll be at a dinner, a Shabbat dinner or something, and I'll be asked to speak on the Parsha. Maybe I haven't prepared for it. I'm not sure that I know what to speak about. And yet there I am asked to offer something. This experience became very real for me recently. Over the summer, I was teaching on a retreat, an IJS retreat that we co-sponsored for women, a silent retreat. And I had prepared a talk to give on the retreat. It was very polished. I felt very confident about it. I felt that the theme was very related to, being women together on silent retreat. And yet, after a few days into the retreat, something else began to emerge in me. I began to sense that something else wanted to come through, a totally different topic. And I didn't have enough time to prepare anything that would be nearly as polished as the talk that I'd come prepared to give. And I gave it the time I could. I just had a few hours to write down some notes. And it wasn't polished, but that talk felt so much more alive, so much more true to the moment, true to what was alive in my heart. And yet I was totally terrified of trying to give this talk that was not nearly as polished as the other one. So I consulted my team, and as you might imagine, they encouraged me to give the less polished one and to garner my courage, because that's what was true to the moment. That's what was true in my heart. And I called upon that courage, and I did give the unpolished talk. And I was able to do so really from my trust in and choosing that I would have what it takes to speak from my heart in the moment. And what I want to offer here is just that even when the reality of the present moment presents us with something totally unprecedented, that the heart in some way knows the way forward, that we can source our guidance from our heart, asking ourselves, what is loving in this moment? What would love do now? There's a beautiful parable from the Baal Shem Tov in this book, where he describes how it's a Hasidic story where a lot of people were auditioning before the Baal Shem Tov, the Hasidic master, the Baal Shem Tov, to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And they were supposed to memorize elaborate systems of kavanot, which were like secret prayers to have in mind before each of the blows. And there was one young person who wanted to do this so badly. He'd been practicing for years. And yet when that moment came and he stood before the Baal Shem Tov, he totally appled, he choked, he forgot all of the kavanot, and he broke down and wept, sobbing loudly. And the Baal Shem Tov said, okay, you're hired. And he said, what? I don't understand. I failed completely. And the Baal Shem Tov related the following parable, which was that there was a palace of a king. And in that palace, there were many secret chambers and secret keys to each chamber, but one key that unlocked them all. And that key is an axe. And the Baal Shem Tov said, the king is the divine. The palace is this world, the house of God. The secret chambers are all of our spiritual experiences, the spiritual realms that bring us close to the divine. The secret keys are these kavanot, the intentions, the prayers that we bring, and yet the axe, the one key that opens every chamber and brings us directly into the presence of the divine, is a broken heart. So a broken heart, or I would say a heart that is broken open, a heart that is truly alive, truly feeling, is where we can find God, and is enough to lead us forward, to help us meet the present moment. And so I'd love to bring that inspiration into our sit, into our practice together today, opening space here for the intelligence of the heart, for the guidance of the heart, for the way that the heart can lead us in any moment in responding to what is emerging. And so just inviting you to settle into a posture that will be supportive of mindful presence this morning. A posture that will be supportive of relaxation and also wakefulness. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze. Inviting ourselves to more fully arrive here in the present moment. Whatever has already happened today, whatever might be coming later, just for now, we can set it down. Returning again here to this moment. Allowing the attention to rest on an anchor, perhaps the breath, or another sensation in the body. Becoming present to meet the truth of our lives as it emerges, moment by moment. As the mind wanders, simply noting that thinking is happening, gently returning again and again to the present moment. Welcoming ourselves to be here as we are. We meet whatever is emerging in the body, in the heart, in the mind, with kindness, with an open heart. Allowing the heart to lead the way in meeting and responding to whatever is arising, moment by moment. We might just ask ourselves, what would love do now? What would love do now? It's not, the answer is not in the mind. It's not in the mind. You can ask that question directly to our heart. An answer might emerge as a thought or a sensation in the body, or it might just be a question. In any given moment, what would love do now? What would love do now? What would love do now? We let the heart lead us in meeting each moment. And we trust that that's enough. As we come to the end of our practice, I want to share these words from Rabbi Alan Liu that he imagines for the first night of Rosh Hashanah as we come together in spiritual community before the divine. This is real. This is very real. This is absolutely inescapable. And we are utterly unprepared. And we have nothing to offer but each other and our broken hearts. And that will be enough. And that will be enough. You can gently open your eyes if they've been closed. In your time. Thank you all so much for your presence and your practice today.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And we move from that beautiful teaching and practice into hearing the sound of the shofar. Thanks to John Silver for being our Baal Tekiah today, inviting you to sit. I'll turn things over to you, John.
Thank you. And thank you for that wonderful teaching, Rebecca. And it's interesting, it's only been the last few years that I've related personally to that story about sounding the shofar. And what sound is more raw than the sound of the shofar? And while paradoxically, I'm telling you or asking you to do this, to be prepared to hear the sound of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah, you're not going to be prepared for whatever comes up at that time, because something may come up totally differently. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to sound the notes, but I'm going to pause between the notes. So the tekiah is to sort of break open your heart, to sort of circumcise your heart. Then we have the shvarim, trua, the pain, and then the healing from the last tekiah. And I'll pause for a few seconds in between.
Thank you so much, John. Friends, we seal our practice by offering an opportunity for those of you in mourning, observing yard sites, or if it's your custom to join in the Kaddish, to do so. If you're not reciting Kaddish, just to stay present and offer your compassionate support for those who are. Thanks to Andrew Schumann, who's holding our text space, for sharing the words of the mourner's Kaddish on the screen. And if you're reciting them with me, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Yallah,
Yamal
Yivrach,
Yivrach
Yiruteh,
Brute,
Yamlich
Yamlich
Malchuteh,
Malchute,
Chayechon, Yomechon,
Yamechon,
Uchaye,
Chaye,
Dechal Beit
Beit
Yisrael,
Yisrael,
Bagalat,
Bagalat,
Barit,
Bisman
V'Tibru,
Karu, Amen.
Yehi
Yehi
Shmei
Shmei
Rabba
Rabba
Mivarach,
Mivarach
Lam
Mivarach
U'ameh
Mivarach
Amayach,
Mivarach
Yitbarach,
Yiparach,
V'Yishtabach,
Yishtabach,
V'Yif'ar, V'Yitramam,
Yishtaman,
V'Yaseh,
Yishaseh,
V'Yitadar,
Yitadar,
V'Yitalel,
Yitalel,
V'Yitlalal,
Yitalal, Shmei
V'Yishach,
B'Yishach,
V'Yikhu.
La'ela,
La'ela min kol
Kol
birchata
Birkat
v'shuvacha,
Shuvata,
v'chata
Shvachata
v'nechamata.
V'Nechamata,
Tamiram
Tamiram
ba'alma
Mal
v'yimru
Yimru,
amen.
Amen.
Yehi
Yehi
shlama
Shlama
rabba
Rabba
b'Yishmayel.
B'Yishmayel,
V'chayin aleinu
Aleinu
v'yalkut
Yako
Yisrael
Yisrael
v'yimru
V'Imru,
amen.
Amen. Ose
Shalom
Shalom
v'rama.
V'Rama, Ase
Shalom
Shalom
aleinu v'yal
Yisrael
Kol
V'Yoko
Yoshvei
Yosvei
Tevel.
Tevel
Amen.
V'Yosvei
Shalom,
Tevel.
Mama.
Amen.
Booyah, shalom. Elena, Ko Yisrael, bro.
Amen.
Amen.
I'm thinking to
Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks to our teacher, Rebecca Schisler, for today's really gorgeous practice, and to John Silver for sounding the shofar for us. Thanks to Andrew Schumann for holding our text space with grace and skill so that we can practice together. Thanks, Andrew. And as always, everyone's invited to stay on for a conversation with today's teacher about the practice, or to share reflections, or if you'd like to use the time just to continue to sit together with us. And if you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow. Rabbi Sam Feinsmith will lead us at our usual time to sit into Shabbat together and to close out this week of Elul practice together. We hope to see you then if you're leaving us now. And if you do have a question for Rebecca, please put it in the chat. And if you can, preface it by writing a question in all caps. And otherwise, feel free just to share reflections on your experience with today's practice. Rebecca, one of the things I noticed when you were like sharing those stories, those panic-inducing stories about, oh my God, was that even though I've read those stories in the book, and we've all been there, we've all had these moments of, oh, I'm not prepared, right? Or the moment kind of overwhelms us in some way. And I was thinking about the relationship between that kind of, I'll speak for myself, the kind of like panicky sense that comes up, that on the one hand, but on the other hand, what also comes up is what you were describing, of this sense of it's going to be okay, and to trust be, being held in love and being trusting that whatever is going to, that kind of anxiety can crack the heart, at least for me, it can crack the heart open and shift into, it's okay, whatever happens will be okay, it'll be enough. So I'd imagine many folks here can relate to that. So what do you think about those moments? How would you like zero in on that in terms of that, your teaching of, oh, love is here,
Mhm.
in those freak out moments
Yeah.
we all have.
Yeah. So I want to share a few things. One, I find myself so often, I find myself so grateful that I've chosen this path as a mindfulness teacher because it's always about being honest and truthful about what is here in the present moment, and whatever that is, that's always a gateway into presence, and that's really what we're doing. We're coming into the present moment, into acknowledgement of and awareness of what is true, and then meeting that with love, basically. That's what we're doing. That's what we're practicing. I'll also share that in those moments that are really hard, like where we just can't be present, the anxiety is so strong, we feel so unprepared. I want to also say for myself, like, even if in that moment I can't access love or the heart or the heart's guidance, and sometimes that happens afterwards, when the anxiety has softened a little bit, there's always opportunity afterwards to go back and really look at, okay, what happened there? Was it okay? Was it okay that happened? Was I actually met with love and held with love? Was it possible that I was met with love there, even on some level? If not, can I meet myself with love now? And then the last thing I want to say is just this, I think this teaching about like the heart's intelligence, the guidance that is available in the heart from that question of what would love do, and that actually trusting that that's perhaps enough to guide us on in our lives in general, meeting every moment, I think I can't overstate or understate how profound of a teaching that is. How profound it has been for me in my life, which has been in my path has been pretty unconventional since I was a young adult. And I started practicing very early on, and that question remained at the center for me as a young adult, making a lot of choices that really shaped my direction in my life, continually coming back to that question of what would love do here in this moment. It's been profoundly powerful. And I think the journey of learning to really trust that guidance is something that has to be cultivated over time. Like, it's like the trust in that is something to explore for yourself, to examine through the lens of your own experience. And I thank God, I really do feel a lot of trust in that question and listening to that. And it's something that it's been cultivated through experience of just experiencing again and again, oh, this works. This works.
And there's a lot, it's interesting. There are a lot of great questions here. There's one of which is, goes to that question about what your process is when you felt nervous, when you were unprepared. Do you just take a deep breath and jump off that cliff and hope you can fly? Kind of answer that. Can you slow down that process? Because part of it seems to be to acknowledging the fear also, right?
Definitely.
Like the oh my God moment.
When we push it away, it just makes it stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can you kind of walk us through?
Well, yeah, absolutely. For sure, breath. I think breath and a deep breath is one of those things that is so simple that we throw it out because we're too simple, not going to work. But it's actually so powerful. I think it's always the first step when there's any kind of strong emotion, pleasant or unpleasant, to take a deep breath is extremely regulating. And then for me, to go back to the example I shared when I was on retreat this summer and I wanted to speak from my heart, the topic that was really emerging from my heart that felt true. That felt like the answer to what would love do. It would give that talk,
Mhm.
not the one that I'd
Mhm.
prepared. And it was scary. And so what I did was that I got up there and I took a bunch of deep breaths and it's easier to be on a mindfulness retreat where everybody's taking deep breaths. So it feels more, resonant with just the kind of culture we're creating. But I took some deep breaths and I exactly what you said, Mark, I just shared with everyone. I was like, this is what I'm choosing to do. This has been my process. I feel nervous.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how it will go. I'm not sure if it will feel totally coherent. And yet it feels alive. And I'm choosing to trust that I am going to have what I need within me, the wisdom that I need within me to speak to the moment as it emerges. And that's what I wanted to give the talk about anyway. So it's a very meta kind of experience. And it's very empowering ultimately when we can start to realize, oh, I really do have the wisdom within me to meet the moment, however it emerges. And it comes from the heart compass. Because without a sense of like, I'm wanting to respond lovingly to this moment, there's no direction, right? That can be like a baseline kind of kavana.
What do you think about that? What you just said? Maybe there may not be an answer to this, but the question about you just said something like, and correct me if I heard it wrong, that I'm calling on love in some way, as opposed to I'm being met by love. And maybe both are happening at the same time. Like, I'm freaking out. And I'll acknowledge that. I'll say, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, but I'm calling on love here. Or in the acknowledging of, I am afraid, just naming and labeling the feeling, that love can kind of like that kind of makes the presence of love more palpable in a way to say, I'm okay. This is going to be okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm willing to let go of some control, because as people are saying in the chat, like some people are saying, prefer to hear an imperfect, unrehearsed, heartfelt talk, right, than a perfectly constructed, well-rehearsed talk, right? Because it comes from another place, right? But it requires letting go of control,
right?
Which is terrifying, which is the essence of the practice.
Yeah. And it's interesting that we all prefer to hear that from other people, but then when it's our turn to give the talk,
yes.
And it feels really scary to just speak. So I try to remember that, like, oh yeah, when someone else is up there kind of fumbling a little or not remembering, I feel so much compassion for them, and it's so much more captivating for me because it's real.
Right. I will say, like, I got to that point with like Shabbat, Divrei Torah or talks. I never got to that place with high holiday talks. Always had to be like written, carefully constructed, and it's challenging. I admire people who could do that, who could really trust, because the other part of it is that, and here I think everyone, for me, I think this is kind of universal, and I think you touched on this, is that part of this spiritual practice is really experiencing ourselves as a kli, as a vessel, right? That like we kind of like thin out the ego enough that we can experience this happening through us, as opposed to I'm speaking. I'm just making space for the divine love, however you want to put it, to express itself through me and to channel that in some way. And that strikes me, that's what Lou is describing, this process of, we have this illusion of having this, self, and, this ego, and this, we're in control. And it's an illusion and a delusion. And what's real is that. And in those little freak out moments, that happens, right?
Totally. And I know for myself, if I'm in that moment, especially in the seat of a teacher, and I'm unprepared and it's just the ego present and I want everybody to like me, it is so hard to find what to say. It's so hard. But as soon as the heart comes online and I touch the genuine desire within my heart to offer something beneficial,
Hmm.
well, that's where it comes through. That's where the wisdom comes through. It's that chokhmat halev, right? The wisdom of the heart.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And, you know,
Right.
I think there is, as to speak to what you were saying before, there's a relationship between giving and receiving love. And we find that even in our daily liturgy, with it's like we open to receive ahavat olam's everlasting love, ahava rabba, and then we become fully present, and then ve'ahavta, and then we give it back. And so I think both they're symbiotic. I know for myself, when I'm in that position, it's like I genuinely want to offer something useful and beneficial, and that's what guides me. And it helps a lot, like tremendously, to also feel that I'm met with love, feel that I'm received in love by whoever I'm interacting with. And then there's holding all of that. There's like, you know, Norman Fisher has this beautiful teaching on, he's similar to Alan Liu, another Zen, kind of Zen Jewish teacher. He has a beautiful teaching on ultimate love or absolute love and relative love. And so the relative love is like that giving and receiving love that's always in flux and that we're cultivating. And then the possibility that it's held within a space of absolute love, which has more to do with the quality of loving awareness, holding the experience, that as we cultivate our capacity for that, we start to discover like, oh, there's something about awareness, the gadol, like the big awareness that's unchanging, that is in some way loving. That's something to also explore and discover.
Yeah, and as you're pointing that out, of those parts of the liturgy about cultivating love or receiving love, the Shema is there in the middle, and really then gives us a very different understanding of the Shema as kind of this immersion in that awareness that you're describing. And it's pretty striking that that's where our journey on Yom Kippur ends up, and in chanting the Shema at the end of Yom Kippur. That's where we're headed towards, as we let the walls come down. Beautiful once again. Rebecca, thank you so much. It was really wonderful to have two of your teachings in the same week, and big gift for us all. And I see in the chat people really appreciated, John, as well. You're the shofar and help bring down the walls and crack the heart open for many as well. So thank you for that. And thanks to Andrew. We hope everyone will join us tomorrow.
Beautiful comments in the chat. Thank you all so much. And yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. It's been a delight to be with you.
Pleasure.